Before we get started today, I want to give you a little reminder to hit subscribe and click that little bell so that you get notifications whenever we post a new video and you won't miss out on a thing. Aloha and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Yes They Can Montessori's YouTube channel, where we discuss Montessori in all of its facets. It's all over the place. It's philosophy, it's materials, it's education, it's parenting. We cover it all because I do it all daily in our house and in our lives. So today, again, we're downstairs because upstairs is a little bit crazy with everybody being home. All right, today we're talking about isolation of skill. Do you know what that means? I mean, it sounds pretty straightforward, but do you really know what it means? Do you really know how to apply it? Probably not. It can be tricky. Isolation of skill means that we have to look at the skill that we are expecting a child to learn from a material and try to isolate it as far as possible. So as a quick example, I brought with me the dressing frames. We got these from Lakeshore, I want to say. So they don't have the fancy wooden borders that a normal Montessori material would have, but you know what? They are just as effective. I won't lie. So don't feel like everything that you get has to be full on, like actual directly the way that Montessori herself would have made them. We can make concessions because we all have different abilities and we all have different budgets. So let's be real about that. So don't feel guilty about having materials that are maybe not quite so Montessori, because they still get the job done. And that's what we want. We want to get the job done, right? Right. Okay, so isolation of skill. Snapping frame. There's nothing but snaps here. You unsnap them and then you snap them. That's as far down as isolation can go. Let's say that I was practicing this skill with a jacket, like a rain jacket. My rain jacket has a zipper and then it has snaps. So if a child was doing that, they would feel compelled to do the zipper first because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you do when you put it on them. And then the snaps. That's not isolating the skill. They're learning way more skills than just snapping, especially with that zipper. Like they have to tuck the little thing all the way in. They have to hold it at the bottom and then slide the thing up and without pulling the other side out. That, like, the dexterity involved in that is overwhelming. And yet parents don't realize that that's something that they have to do before they can even get to the snapping. So this has isolated this skill completely. It's the only skill here to practice. Same with buttoning. There's no other skill here. It's just unbutton, button. That's it. So where's the place they might button? Normally, right, you might button a sweater. Okay, that's probably gonna have only buttons all the way down. And before I had these frames, that's what we did. We went to Goodwill and we found a sweater with only buttons on it. And it was literally folded up in a basket on the shelf. That's how they practiced buttoning in a situation where we didn't have these frames. You can still address that skill. It's just a matter of how you do it. Oh man, the zipper, right, we were talking about? Okay, let's talk about this guy right now. You think zipping is an easy skill? Like, it's not, okay? I'm just gonna be honest with you, it's not. This thing, I'm gonna hold this up. Okay, this little guy, I don't even know what it's called, an eyelet, has to tuck right in here. I'll get it. Has to tuck in there, right? Then you have to hold this side down, not this side. This side, you have to remember which side you just tucked in to hold while you zipper this up. There's so much going on right there that your poor little kid is having to do before they even get to the zipping part. Like, they can't even get to the zipping part before this is done. Zipping is tricky. Please save this one for last, unless your child is a little bit older and has maybe practiced with their own clothing. All right, so we're coming to a really, really good description of isolation of skill here in these two next dressing frames. So a lot of people, when they want to teach tying a bow, like their shoelaces, they will get this frame. Do you notice the name of this frame is lacing? It's not bow tying. It's lacing, because this frame is to learn how to lace in and out of the holes. The bottom has a bow, but that's not the skill that you're learning here. Because of the bow at the bottom and the way that this is presented, this would come after the tying dressing frame. And the reason for that, in order to successfully complete the lacing frame, you have to already know how to tie a bow, because that's the last step in this frame. If you left this open and you didn't tie it, then this could be a lacing job all by itself. But most schools will present this with a bow at the bottom, because that's how you tie your shoe. You lace them up and then you put a bow on it, right? So this job is presented after they have mastered bow tying. You can see we have not mastered bow tying. They're mostly here, and maybe that's because this has been moved around a little bit and they've loosened up. But this is just bow tying. There's a lot of steps in bow tying, don't get me wrong. This is not the first thing that I would introduce a child to. I would do these other ones first, because there's a lot of steps and there's a lot of manual dexterity that goes into this job. But as a focus for isolation of skill, this versus this, does that help you understand, like, that this job requires you to tie a bow at the bottom? So you can't teach it to someone who doesn't know how to tie a bow yet? You could teach the lacing part, but not this as a complete job. Does that make sense? Because it's setting them up for failure. You know, like, hey, I'm going to teach you this job up here that has this thing, and I'm just going to ignore the fact that you don't know how to do this yet. Don't do that. Just leave it open. Or wait until they've done this one. Now, this could be lacing as well, because you could take these all the way out, like, because they come out right here, right? So this could be take all three of these out, put them in a basket, and they have to lace them through and then tie it. But again, that would be a secondary lesson. That would be a secondary presentation, because we're learning to tie a bow. We're isolating that skill. Now, theoretically, tying a bow has several skills within it. You gotta cross them, you have to tuck them, tighten them, you have to make a bow on this side, you have to go around and use your thumb to push it through, you have to use your fingers to pull it through, and then you have to pull it tight. When you pull it tight, you have to know which ends you're pulling, right? Because if you pull the other sides trying to pull it tight, you're just gonna make a bigger knot. That's a lot of skills for a tiny little hand and a tiny little brain, right? Not tiny little brain like in a rude way, but just tiny as in doesn't know as much. You get it. So again, this is not something that I would present to someone who is really young. But as you know, as an example, I totally couldn't think of the word example. As an example of a job that needs you to tie a bow and learning how to tie a bow first, it's a pretty good example of isolating that skill. The pink tower. The reason that all the blocks are the same color is because it takes away the skill of matching the colors. The only thing that changes about the pink tower is its size. That's the only skill that that child is learning, is differentiating from large to smaller and smaller and smaller. That's it. They don't have to worry about color. They don't have to worry about texture. They don't have to worry about weight. I mean, they could, because it's naturally going to weigh more. But it's not necessary for them to be able to do that job. Tying the bow is necessary to finish this job. Knowing how much something weighs is not necessary to finish the pink tower. All you have to do is look with your eyes and see that one is bigger and one is smaller. You can do that without touching them. You can see them on the mat and you can tell which one is bigger and which one is smaller. That's why they're all the same color. Which is why a lot of times when parents get like the nesting blocks that have all of the different designs on them, they're so freaking cute. And some of the themes of those are so adorable, like stinking adorable, right? But the reality is they're not really isolating that skill. Are they still going to learn it? Sure. Are they going to internalize it as much? I don't know. Are they going to learn it as quickly? I don't know. Are they going to associate size with the things on that tower? Potentially. Is that isolating the skill of learning size? No. So isolation of skill is one of the basic tenets of Montessori philosophy. Everything that's on a shelf is attempting to isolate a skill. Sometimes you can't isolate it down to one single skill. Like, if I isolated this down to each particular skill and made a different job for each skill, it would be so tedious and it would take forever to get to bow tying, which is why we just save this until someone has a little more manual dexterity. So some things you can't really narrow them down further, but the goal with every job is to narrow it down as far as you can for that job and for that child. My 6-year-old needs a little more isolation than my 8-year-old, 9-year-old. He'll be 9 next month. The two of them need even more isolation than my 13-year-old, right? But she still does need isolation when she's learning a new skill. We need to break it down into easy chunks and isolate each part of a lesson to skills that she can manage and master to set her up for success in the next step. That's all we're doing with isolation of skill, is setting them up for success in the next step of whatever they might be doing. It doesn't matter what the task is, what the end goal is. We are always trying to set them up for success. That's what I want all of my kids to have. That's what I want all the kids in my classes to have. That's what I want every child in the world to have, is success. And if we set them up for that, they can't lose. But that's our job, is to set them up for that. It's their job to actually learn it and do it. It's our job to set them up for success, not failure. And we do that by isolating the skills as much as we can to give them mastery over every step before we ask them to compile it all together in a big, long task. If that is confusing at all, because I have rambled on for I don't even know how long, please leave me a comment and let me know. I will try my best to clarify whatever might be confusing for you. If it's not confusing and you see the places in your house where you are isolating skills, or you see the places where you can isolate skill, let me know that too. I want to know what else you're doing and how else you're isolating the skills, because even with years of training and experience, I still find sometimes where I have to stop and say, oh, I haven't isolated this skill. That's why it's not working. So let me know what you're doing. Leave me a comment below and we'll talk to you next time.